Okay, last problems to kind of get through. Notice we are on problem number or page 10. So remember that we have at least 3 more problems, maybe 4 more problems to get through. So let's take a look at those. But this one here, we can factor this one. Now we're going to do that factoring again. Notice here though, we have a t to the fourth. So the first thing that we're going to do is take out whatever we can that's common. So we're going to take out a t squared, and we have t minus 3t minus 40, t squared minus 3t minus 40 equals 0. So we can see that we have this one here. I can assign that one to 0, so t squared equals 0. So that means that t equals 0. Okay, that's one answer because we take the square root of both sides. And then here we do the graph. You will have to use the box method. You'll have to go back and review the box method in this case. Because there is a couple of problems that you have to do the box method. Remember, we can only do this table if there is a 1 in front of the t squared. So now we're going to figure out all factors of 40. So this minus sign tells me they're both different signs. Larger number is negative. So I'm going to figure them all out. So 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 3, 4 and 10, 5 and negative 8. Notice that 5 plus negative 8 is negative 3. There it is. So I can factor. Remember, I can only use this method if I have a 1 in front. If I have a number in front, I'd have to put these numbers into a box. And then I have to figure out what's the common values to the row and columns as we did before. So you want to go back and review that stuff and make sure you're good. This gives me t equals negative 5. And I don't know why I put an x. This gives me t equals 8. They tell you to put it in order from least to greatest. So negative 5, 0, and 8. Okay. This next problem is a little easier. We're just writing expressions in quadratic form. So we're not solving this. To write equations in quadratic form, I'm going to look at these first two numbers, or these first two terms, and I'm going to see what is common to both of them. So what goes into both 9 and 21? Well, 3 does. What goes into x to the 8th and x to the 4th? Well, an x to the 4th. So I can factor out of those two a 3x to the 4th. So notice I put it in parentheses, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this by 3x to the 4th, and so I get 3x to the 4th. Just happens to be that way. It's not always going to work that way. This one I'm also going to divide out 3x to the 4th, so I get minus 7 times 3x to the 4th because we factored it out. Remember, anytime we're factoring it out, we have to make sure that we write it in there. So that's what we have there. And then plus 12. Now notice here I have 3x to the 4th squared minus 7 times 3x to the 4th plus 12. And here's my answer. Now, how do I know that's the answer? Because we are trying to put this in quadratic form, which means it looks kind of like y squared minus 7y plus 12 if y equals 3x to the 4th. So if we were to substitute it, notice here it's quadratic equation. So notice that that's the form we want to put it in because that's how we're going to solve it. So we're basically going to do something like this and then solve it that way. So you're going to see in this next problem, we're going to do that. So we're going to try to do this one as well. So 16x to the 10th plus 2x to the 5th. What's common to both numbers? A 2 is. So we're going to take out a 2 and an x to the 5th. We're going to divide out a 2x to the 5th, and we're going to be left with 8x to the 5th. Notice they're not the same. And then we're going to divide this one by 2x to the 5th. So that means we have to multiply that by 2x to the 5th. Notice that we have a 1 there. So I really have 1 times 2x to the 5th and then plus 6. But notice these are not the same like they were in the last problem. I need to make them the same. So what I need to do is I need to figure out what can I take out of this to make it a 2. Well, I can take out a 4. So if I take out a 4, I have 2x to the 5th times 2x to the 5th plus 1. I'm not going to put the 1 there. 2x to the 5th plus 6. And now I have 4 times 2x to the 5th squared plus 2x to the 5th plus 6. So notice here I have my 4y squared plus y plus 6, which is when y equals 2x to the 5th. Now it looks like a quadratic. It's in quadratic form. Okay, last one. Now we're going to solve it. So now we have to solve this one. So this one now is a little bit more difficult. We actually have to go through and solve it. But we're going to do the same thing. We're going to see what's common to both of these. Notice that both of them do not have any similar numbers. So we can just take out a 1. I'm not going to write that. But we can take out an x squared. So I have an x squared. If I divide this by x squared, I get x squared. This one I can also take out an x squared. So I have a minus, and then I have another x squared. So I divide that by x squared, and I'm left with a minus 3. Notice I put the number in front instead of at the end. And now I have x squared minus 3, x squared squared minus 3x squared minus 10. Now it's in quadratic form. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite it. So I'm going to set y equal to x squared. And I have y squared minus 3y minus 10 equals 0. I'm now going to solve that. There's a 1 in front. That's a good thing. So I have a negative 10. I'm going to create my little table. So my little table tells me 1 is positive, 1 is negative. The larger one is negative. 1 and 10, 2 and 5. These two add up to negative 3. So I get y plus 2. Notice I have not used x again. I have to go back, though, and I have to resubstitute back in. Now I have to plug in an x squared into both of those. But before I do that, I'm going to solve for y. Y equals negative 2, and y equals 5. So what I really have is x squared equals negative 2, and x squared equals 5. We're going to do this one first. We're going to take the square root of both sides, plus or minus. Anytime I take the square root, to solve it, I have to remember to put that plus or minus on the right side. So that becomes x equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Over on this side, I have x equals plus or minus the square root of negative 2. Remember, any square root of a negative number becomes an I. So it's x equals plus or minus I square root of 2. And there are my 4 answers. So I have plus I squared root of 2, minus I squared root of 2, plus square root of 5, minus square root of 5. So there are 4 answers there. So those would be B and C. And you have 2 checks here, so you can see what the 2 checks are. I believe problem number 1 on this one is still incorrect. It was incorrect when I did the lesson. And then I called it in. I don't know if they changed it yet or not. I haven't seen the ticket come back telling me it's okay. But don't do number 1, just do number 2. Reveal math textbook. You have 31 problems, 37 points. Yes, you have a lot of problems, but I did 9 of them, or 8 of them. So you have 23 problems, and they're not due for almost a week, actually for a week. And that's it.